Grant Hale's grin didn't fade when the judge asked if he'd read the agreement. It faded when his own attorney slid a single sheet out of the stack, quietly, like a man handling a live wire, and whispered, "Grant, this page changes everything." The color drained from my husband's face so fast I almost checked the courtroom lights. His fingers tightened around the pen. The signature line trembled under his hand. For a second, the winner everyone came to watch looked like a man realizing the prize was rigged, except the trap was built from his own paperwork. And me? I sat there in a plain navy dress, hair pinned back, eyes lowered, like a woman who'd already lost. I let my shoulders sag. I let my hand shake just enough to sell it. 15 minutes earlier, his mother had smiled at me from the gallery like she was attending a graduation. His graduation from marriage, my graduation into nothing. Grant leaned toward his lawyer again, voice cracking. "What is that?" His lawyer didn't answer out loud. He didn't need to. The judge was watching. The clerk was watching. Even the bailiff shifted, sensing the air change. I kept my gaze on the table, on the neat stack of papers Grant had demanded, the ones he insisted would give him the house, the company, the cars, every shiny thing he'd been bragging about online. He wanted everything. So I gave him everything, but I'm skipping ahead, because you need the beginning to understand why I didn't scream, why I didn't beg, why I didn't fight him the way everyone expected. My name is Morin Quinn. I'm 33, and 3 months ago, my husband walked into our kitchen like he was stepping into a meeting, not a marriage. "I'm filing," he said, calm as a forecast. "I'll keep the business and the house. You can have custody. That's fair." Fair. He said it while I was rinsing strawberries for our son's lunch. He said it while the dishwasher hummed, while the fridge light glowed, while our family photos stared down from the wall like witnesses. Then he added the part that told me exactly who he'd become. "And don't make this ugly, Morin. You don't have the money for a war." I looked at him, at the suit I'd ironed, the schedule I'd managed, the life I'd held together with invisible labor, and I nodded like I was defeated. Because the truth was, I'd been ready for this longer than he'd been planning it, and the moment he asked for everything, that was the moment he signed his own ending. No ban munmin tiap tuk jung format, nai banchikanhan, lam fan hai. Grant Hale wasn't always cruel. That's what makes men like him dangerous. You remember the early version, and you keep hoping he'll come back. I met Grant at 21, working the front desk at a title company in Austin, closing packets, ringing phones, deadlines. I lived for order and clean numbers. Grant walked in wearing a cheap suit and expensive confidence. He was flipping a duplex and needed the closing rushed. He smiled at everyone, but his eyes stayed on me. "You're the only person here who looks like she actually reads documents," he said. I laughed, because no one had ever called my competence attractive. We dated fast, married faster. When our son Evan was born, Grant promised, "I'm going to build something real for us." My grandmother June gave me different advice. "Love him," she said, "but keep your own money, not secret money, your money, something nobody can touch." So I did. Retirement account in my name. Grandpa's small inheritance in a separate bank. I never mixed it, no matter how temporary the emergency sounded. 2 years later, Hale Development took off. 1 duplex became 5. 5 became whole streets of renovations, as Grant asked me to quit my job and help for a little while. A little while turned into 11 years. I became the invisible engine. Budgets, permits, vendor contracts, payroll, lender emails, client calls. At Industry Mixers, Grant was the genius. I was Grant's wife, smiling beside him while people praised his discipline and vision. Then the gratitude dried up. He stopped asking and started announcing. He stayed late more often. He criticized small things. My hair, my clothes, my lack of ambition, like I wasn't running his back office while raising our kid. Once, he glanced at my jeans and said, "You used to try. You've gotten comfortable." Comfortable, like exhaustion was a character flaw. I didn't fight him, not yet. Evan was watching, and I still believed in the old Grant. 3 months ago, that man didn't come home. A stranger did. Grant sat at our kitchen table like a banker, not a husband, no apology, just terms. "I'm filing," he said. "I keep the company and the house. You keep Evan. Don't make this ugly, Morin. You don't have the money for a war." I nodded like I was defeated, but while he talked about fairness, my mind rewound to one night years earlier when I opened the company books, traced a transfer, then another, and found a number that didn't make sense. By Friday, Grant had turned our house into a hotel, except I was the guest who wasn't allowed to touch the towels. It started small, the way control always does. "Just until things are finalized," he said, guiding me toward the downstairs guest room like he was doing me a favor. 1 drawer, 2 feet of closet space. My side of the bathroom counter reduced to a single toothbrush and a travel-size face wash. Then the paperwork appeared. Overnight, neatly stacked, tabs, deadlines. Grant's attorney emailed me like I was an employee being off-boarded. Grant didn't yell. He didn't have to. He used silence like a weapon. A week after he announced the divorce, my card declined at the grocery store. I stood there holding Evan's favorite cereal, cheeks burning, while the cashier waited and the line behind me sighed. Grant's text came in seconds later. "We're separating expenses. Use what's in your account." The problem was I already knew what was in my account because I'd been the one balancing those numbers every month. 2 weeks in, he brought her home. Her name was Paige Rowe, 27, all glossy hair and expensive athleisure. Oh, she walked into my kitchen like she'd been there before, like she'd rehearsed it, opened my fridge, and started blending something green in my blender. Then she tied on my apron, not the cheap one from Target, the faded linen apron my grandmother stitched by hand, the one I wore on Sunday mornings when I still believed our life was real. Grant watched my face for a reaction. Paige smiled like she'd won a prize at a carnival. That night, Evan ate dinner in silence, eyes on his plate, while Grant's hand rested on Paige's knee under my table, under my lights, over my dishes. The humiliation wasn't accidental. It was scheduled. And then his mother arrived, Celeste Hale, pearl earrings, perfect lipstick, the kind of soft voice that makes cruelty sound polite. "I'm here to help you pack, honey," she said. Oh, already scanning the room like an appraiser, she decided what I needed. Old sweaters, fine. Photos, a few. Anything valuable? Marital property. She handed me thick black contractor bags. Not boxes, bags. When she reached for my grandmother's recipe tin, I placed my hand on it first. "Not that," I said. Celeste's smile twitched. "We'll see what the lawyer says." That was when I called the one person I thought was safe, Kelsey Park, my best friend since college. She came over with iced coffee and sympathy, swearing Grant was a fool. But over the next few days, Grant started responding to thoughts I hadn't spoken to him. Apartments I'd only mentioned to Kelsey. Plans I'd only whispered on her couch. And the strangest part, Kelsey never looked surprised when he knew. That night, after everyone went to bed, I opened my laptop and pulled up the company ledger again. I searched the transfer that had bothered me for years. A new entry popped up, fresh, recent, and terrifying. A lien notice attached to an asset Grant had just demanded, and suddenly I understood why he wanted everything so badly, because he didn't know what everything really was. The lien notice wasn't just a warning, it was a doorway. I stayed up past midnight with the ledger open, the house silent, except for the distant sound of Paige laughing downstairs, like she was already living my life. I clicked the attachment, and my stomach dropped. A construction loan I'd never approved, a line of credit stacked on top of another line of credit, or a temporary bridge note with a maturity date that was next month. Then I pulled the property file for the house Grant had demanded in the divorce. 3 liens, not one. And when I traced the payments backward, the pattern snapped into focus like a picture developing in a dark room. Grant wasn't building an empire. He was borrowing against it to keep it looking alive. I ran the numbers 3 times because I didn't want them to be real. We were upside down on the flagship property. The company had vendor payables that should have been cleared months ago. There were penalty fees in places I'd never seen before. And the strangest part, cash leaking out in neat little increments to an account labeled consulting, same day, same amount. Over and over, consulting, my back foot. I followed that trail to a lease agreement for a downtown condo. Furnished. Paid for by the business, not our name, his. When the sun came up, my hands were steady. My heart wasn't. But the panic I expected never arrived. What came instead was clarity. Grant thought he was stealing my life. He was actually trying to hand me a sinking ship and sprint away from the waterline. I didn't confront him. Men like Grant don't confess. They rewrite. If I accused him, he'd tell me I was emotional, unstable, confused. He'd turn it into a story where I was the problem. So I did the one thing my grandmother June always preached like scripture. Protect what's yours before you explain anything. That afternoon, I called a family law attorney named Nora Sloan. 51, sharp eyes, calmer than an ER nurse. I walked into her office with a tote bag and a smile that didn't match the situation. "I want half," she said after 5 minutes, like it was the only sane sentence in the room. "Half the business, half the house, half the accounts, we fight." I set my tote on her desk and slid out printed documents, loan statements, lien notices, payoff schedules, the condo lease. Nora stopped flipping pages, then she looked up slowly. "Morin, do you understand what this means?" "I do," I said. "It means he's begging me to take the wrong side of the deal." She leaned back. "Then we expose him." I shook my head. "No." Nora blinked. "No." "What if I don't want the assets?" I said softly. "What if I want him to have everything he asked for in writing, so he can't dump the debt back on me later?" Silence stretched, then Nora's mouth curled just slightly, not a smile, more like recognition. "You're not here to fight," she said. "You're here to set a trap." I met her eyes. "And I need it airtight." Nora reached for a legal pad. "Then we start today." Because the next step wasn't revenge, it was performance. And I had to become the perfect defeated wife. So Grant would stop being careful and sign. The first mediation happened in a beige conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet, perfect for ending a marriage like it was a budget meeting. Grant arrived early, relaxed, wearing the kind of suit that said, "I already won." Paige wasn't allowed inside, but her reflection kept flashing across his phone screen. Texts, selfies, little hearts. He read them while our mediator explained fair division like we were negotiating furniture, not a life. Nora slid a legal pad toward me. "Ask for half," her handwriting said. I didn't. When the mediator turned to me and asked what I wanted, I let my eyes glass over on cue. I inhaled like I was holding back tears, then whispered, I don't want to fight. I want Evan stable. I can start over with something small." Grant's eyebrows lifted, surprised, then pleased. "How small?" the mediator asked. I looked down at my hands. 30,000, my personal things, and shared custody. The room went quiet in that uncomfortable way adults get when they watch someone lose too easily. Grant didn't even pretend to consider it. "Done," he said like he was tipping a waiter. Then he leaned back and watched me like I was a defeated opponent he didn't need to respect anymore. Good. Because respect makes people careful. And I needed him careless. Over the next weeks, I performed the same role in different rooms, red-rimmed eyes, shaking voice, and apologizing for being difficult even when I asked for almost nothing. Grant started telling everyone I gave up. Celeste bragged to anyone who would listen that I'd walk away with a little check in my pride, if she still has any. Kelsey kept calling, sweet as syrup. "Are you okay? What's your plan?" I fed her the plan I wanted Grant to hear. Cheap apartments, no lawyer drama, just peace. Within hours, Grant would casually mention the exact neighborhood I'd considered, as if he'd guessed it. That's when I knew Nora was right. We weren't just building a settlement. We were building a paper trap. Behind the scenes, Nora filed protective motions and tightened every boundary around my separate accounts. She drafted an addendum that listed every liability attached to every asset. Mortgages, liens, vendor debt, the condo lease, so whoever kept everything also kept the weight. Then something even better happened. Grant's attorney emailed Nora requesting an independent financial review to confirm valuations. Nora forwarded it to me with one line, "This is the only door out for him." I waited. Grant denied it the same day. "No audits," he wrote. "We're finalizing. My ex isn't entitled to delay this." Nora called me, voice calm but electric. "He just refused the lifeboat." Outside my window, the afternoon sun looked almost gentle. Inside my chest, something clicked into place, because now there was only one thing left to do. Get him to sign that refusal, and then hand him everything he demanded. Grant's confidence spread fast. He started calling our settlement easy, like I was a speed bump on his way to a better life. Evan and I moved into a cramped two-bedroom with a kitchen the size of a closet. Evan tried to turn it into an adventure. Action figures lined on the windowsill like tiny guards. "It's fine, Mom," he kept saying. "It's just different." But kids hear the cracks. One night, while I assembled a second-hand bookshelf, Evan said, "Dad told me money's tight." I kept my voice calm. "Okay." He hesitated, then asked the question Grant didn't want him asking. "Then why does Paige have new bags every time I see her?" Grant had been feeding Evan a gentle poison. "Mom is making this hard. Mom is emotional. Mom is costing us money." Evan was stuck in the middle, trying to make both stories fit. I sat beside him. "Sometimes Adults pretend things are fine, I said. Pretending doesn't last. Evan searched my face. Is Dad pretending? I didn't hand him my anger. I handed him a promise. If anything feels confusing, you tell me, and you keep your eyes open. The next morning, Nora emailed the final draft. The front pages looked like surrender. Grant keeps the house, the company, the vehicles. I take a modest check and walk away. Then came the attachment Nora cared about, the liability schedule, mortgages, liens, vendor payables, the condo lease, every obligation tied to every asset Grant demanded. If he signs this, Nora said, he doesn't just get the crown, he gets the weight. We needed one more nail. Proof, he was warned. That proof arrived when Grant's lawyer requested a financial review. Nora forwarded it to me with one line, "This is his exit." I waited for Grant to take it. He didn't. He called, irritated. "Tell your lawyer to stop. I'm not paying for an audit. We're finalizing." I let my voice tremble on purpose. "Okay, I'm sorry." The satisfaction in his pause was almost audible. "Good. Be reasonable for once." An hour later, the waiver hit Nora's inbox. Grant, acknowledging counsel, advised an independent review, and he declined anyway. He signed it fast, careless, like a man signing a receipt. That night he texted, "Thanks for keeping this civil. Evan deserves peace." I stared at the screen until the words felt numb, then typed, "I agree. Evan deserves peace." Because tomorrow morning in courtroom 8B, Grant was going to get exactly what he asked for. Everything. And he still didn't know what everything meant. Courtroom 8B felt colder than it should have. Not temperature, pressure. The kind that sits on your shoulders and makes every breath sound too loud. Grant arrived first, of course. Charcoal suit, perfect tie knot. That new watch catching the light every time he moved his wrist. Like he wanted the room to notice time belonged to him now. He shook hands with his attorney, smiled like a man closing a deal, not ending a marriage. Celeste was already in the gallery, pearls, crossed legs, a small satisfied smile like she'd come to watch a house get sold at auction, and the buyer was her son. Paige wasn't allowed inside, but I saw her through the glass doors in the hallway, hovering near the benches with her designer bag and her phone. She looked bored, like this was a minor inconvenience on her way to becoming Mrs. Hale. And Kelsey, my sweet, loyal Kelsey, sent a text the moment I walked in. "You okay?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She would hear everything soon enough. Nora and I sat at our table with a stack of documents that looked like surrender. That's what everyone saw. A woman giving up the house, the company, the life, a small check, and a quiet exit. Nora leaned close, voice barely moving her lips. "Slow on your signatures. Let him rush. Let him feel safe." Grant glanced over at me, eyes flicking from my plain navy dress to my empty hands. No jewelry, no power, no fight. His mouth twitched like he was trying not to smirk. The bailiff called the case. We stood. The judge took her seat, calm and sharp, the kind of woman who'd watched 1,000 couples swear they were being reasonable while they sharpened knives behind their backs. "Mrs. Quinn," she said, scanning the agreement, "you're relinquishing claims to significant marital property. Are you certain you understand the terms?" I softened my voice the way I had practiced. "Yes, Your Honor." "And you're signing voluntarily?" "Yes." The judge's eyes narrowed slightly, like she didn't like the shape of this. "Why agree to this division?" I swallowed like it hurt. "I just want Grant to have what he asked for. I want this to be over. For our son." Grant's confidence practically sat up straighter. The clerk distributed the final packet. Page after page, signature lines like stepping stones. Grant signed fast, too fast, skipping paragraphs, barely reading headers. His pen moved like he was afraid the paper might change its mind. Nora squeezed my wrist once under the table. A reminder. Breathe. Across the aisle, Grant's attorney flipped to the back, doing what lawyers do when their clients don't. Reading. His eyes paused, then narrowed. He flipped back a page, forward again. Slower now. And when he leaned toward Grant, his mouth close to Grant's ear, I saw something I hadn't seen on my husband's face in months. Uncertainty. The whisper didn't reach me. But whatever it was, it made Grant stop signing. His attorney's whisper was so soft I didn't hear the words, only the effect. Grant's shoulders stiffened. His pen paused mid-stroke. "What?" Grant mouthed, still trying to keep his smile. He glanced toward the gallery where Celeste sat upright, already picturing the celebration lunch. Then he looked down, finally reading for the first time all morning. The page his lawyer had flagged wasn't the custody schedule. It was the attachment. Titled in dull, ultra-harmless language that makes arrogant men stop paying attention. Liability schedule. I watched his eyes move over the columns. Asset, balance, lien, maturity date, personal guarantee. His jaw flexed. Across the aisle, Nora's posture didn't change, but her foot pressed lightly against mine under the table. Let him fall. Grant's lawyer leaned in again. Urgent now. Grant shook his head like he could shake the numbers off the paper. "No!" he hissed, not loud enough for the judge, but loud enough for me. "That's not—" He snapped the packet shut and tried to slide it away, as if hiding it would undo what he'd signed. The judge noticed. "Mr. Hale," she said, voice calm but edged. "Is there a problem with the agreement?" Grant straightened too fast. "No, Your Honor, just a question." His lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we'd like a brief recess to review an addendum." Nora stood. "Objection. This document has been exchanged. Mr. Hale is represented by counsel." Grant shot his lawyer a look that said, "Fix it." His lawyer's face said he couldn't. The judge's eyes moved between them. "Mr. Hale, have you read the full agreement, including attached schedules and disclosures?" Grant opened his mouth, then closed it. He tried again. I thought I understood it." "That's not the question," the judge said. "Did you read it?" Silence. Then Grant's voice came out smaller than he wanted. "Not every page." A murmur rippled through the room. The judge looked to counsel. "Did you advise your client to conduct an independent review of the marital estate?" His attorney hesitated one beat too long. Nora didn't. She slid a single sheet forward. "Yes, Your Honor, he was advised." He declined. "We have a signed waiver." Grant's head snapped toward her, panic flashing raw. "What waiver?" Nora's eyes stayed on the judge. "The one he signed." Grant's pen slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the table, and for the first time Celeste's smile in the gallery disappeared. His pen lay on the table like it had betrayed him. Grant stared at the waiver Nora had slid forward, and for a heartbeat I saw the boy inside the man, the part that still believed confidence could erase consequences. Then his eyes sharpened, hunting for someone to blame. "This isn't what I agreed to," he said louder now. "This is hidden debt." The judge didn't flinch. "Mr. Hale, the schedule is attached to the agreement. It is incorporated." Grant's attorney rose. Careful. Your Honor, my client may not have understood the extent of the liabilities. We'd like a recess to review. You had months, the judge cut in, and counsel's recommendation for an independent review was declined, correct? Grant's attorney looked down. Correct. The judge's gaze returned to Grant. Is that your signature on the waiver? Grant's throat moved. Yes. Then you acknowledged you were advised, and you declined anyway. She tapped the packet. That is informed risk. Grant leaned forward, voice dropping into a hiss. Murrin, what did you do? I kept my expression small, harmless. I signed what you brought me, I said. The judge glanced at me. Mrs. Quinn, did you provide all requested disclosures? Nora answered. Yes, Your Honor. Full disclosures were exchanged. We offered documentation. Mr. Hale refused a review. Grant shook his head like a drowning man. No, she knew. She ran the books. She's manipulating this. The judge's tone turned sharp. Mr. Hale, your marriage is not evidence. The court deals in documents. These debts are attached to assets you demanded. Celeste shifted in the gallery, pearls suddenly too bright. Through the glass doors I caught a flash of Paige's face in the hallway, her mouth slightly open, like she'd heard a word she didn't recognize. Lynn. Grant's lawyer whispered again, urgent. Grant snapped, Stop, and shoved the packet back like it burned. The bailiff took one step forward. The judge didn't even look up. Mr. Hale, sit. Grant sat. Now, the judge said, you have two choices. Proceed with the agreement as executed, or set this for trial, where these same liabilities will be examined in far greater detail. Grant's eyes darted to his attorney. Trial meant subpoenas, audits, discovery. Every secret account, every transfer, every consulting payment dragged into fluorescent light. He swallowed. Then, with a hand that finally shook in front of everyone, Grant picked up the pen again and signed the last page. The judge didn't slam the gavel like in movies. She brought it down once, clean, final, and the sound landed in my chest like a lock turning. This agreement is executed, she said. The marriage is dissolved. Mr. Hale assumes the assets estated, along with all associated liabilities. Mrs. Quinn receives her settlement and releases further claims. Next case. Next case. Grant sat frozen, staring at the last page he'd signed like it might rewrite itself if he stared hard enough. His attorney leaned in, speaking quickly now, too late to be useful. Across the room, Celeste gripped the pew rail with both hands, pearls suddenly too tight around her throat. I stood, smoothed my dress, and gathered my folder like I'd just finished a routine appointment. Nora didn't smile. She didn't need to. She simply tucked the signed waiver into a file like a surgeon placing a scalpel back on the tray. Grant's chair scraped as he shot up. Your Honor, the judge didn't look at him. Mr. Hale, you were represented by counsel. You confirmed you understood. Sit down, or I will have you removed. Grant's mouth opened. Closed, he sat, hard. As we walked out, I felt eyes on my back. Not pity anymore, curiosity. That shift is loud when it happens. In the hallway, Paige finally looked up from her phone. She saw Grant's face through the glass, and her smile faltered like she'd expected champagne and got a bill. What happened? She asked. Tied too bright. Grant's attorney stepped out behind us, phone already to his ear. We need to call the bank, he said, voice strained. And your accountant. Immediately. Paige blinked. Bank? Why would... Grant stormed through the doors, tugging his tie loose. It's fine, he snapped. but his voice cracked on the lie. It's a misunderstanding. Nora paused beside me just long enough for Paige to hear the truth without the drama. It's not a misunderstanding, she said calmly. It's math. Paige's gaze darted from Nora to Grant to the papers in his hand. Her eyes landed on the word Leanne and stuck there like a hook. You told me you owned the house, she whispered. Grant's jaw worked. I do. Paige's laugh came out sharp and scared. You owe the house. For 1 second, she looked at him the way I used to, like she was searching for the old version that never existed. Then survival took over. She hugged her bag to her chest, backed away, and turned on her heel. Paige? Grant reached for her. She didn't stop. This isn't what I signed up for. She threw over her shoulder, walking fast, heels clicking like a countdown. Celeste appeared in the doorway behind him, face pinched. Grant, she hissed, tell me this isn't real. Grant didn't answer. He couldn't. He just looked at me, wild, accusing, desperate, like I'd stolen something from him. I met his eyes once. Then I walked past him toward the elevator, because the trap wasn't closing. It had already closed. The collapse didn't take months. It took days. 5 business days after courtroom 8B, Grant's everything started calling him back, one ringtone at a time. First it was his banker, then his accountant, then a number labeled unknown that kept coming back like a mosquito you can't kill. By the end of the week, he looked like a man who hadn't slept since the gavel fell. The swagger was gone. The watch was still there, but he kept checking it like time might apologize. Nora texted me from her office. First default notice came in. He missed a payment already. I wasn't surprised. Those debts had been held together by speed, charm, and denial. The moment the divorce made him the sole name on the weight, the whole structure stopped being shared and became his. On Saturday, Evan came home quiet, too quiet for a 9-year-old. He dropped his backpack and said, Dad yelled at Grandma. I kept my voice soft. About what? Evan stared at the floor. About the house. He said the bank is being stupid. And Paige, he swallowed. Paige isn't answering his calls. So she ran. Exactly like Nora predicted. Then Evan said the part that made my chest tighten. Grandma told me you should help Dad because it's your fault he's stressed. There it was. Celeste couldn't reach me directly anymore, so she aimed at the one place that still had a door into my life. I sat beside Evan on our small couch and took his hands. Listen to me, I said. Adult problems are never a kid's job. Not yours. Not ever. He nodded, but his eyes stayed worried. Is Dad in trouble? I chose the truth that wouldn't break him. Dad made choices. Now he has to handle the results. That night, I got 3 calls I didn't answer. Grant, Celeste, then Kelsey. Kelsey left a voicemail, voice shaking. Marin, please call me. I didn't know it was this bad, I swear. I replayed it twice, not because I believed her, but because it confirmed something. The spy finally realized the ship was sinking. The next morning, Grant texted me a photo of an envelope stamped Final Notice. You knew. You set me up. Fix this. I stared at the message until the anger cooled into something cleaner. Then I forwarded it to Nora. Her response came back immediately. Do not engage. Also, there's something else. A second text followed, just with a screenshot of the consulting payments I'd flagged months ago. Only now Nora had traced the receiving account to a real name, not Paige, not a contractor. Kelsey Park. And suddenly, the story wasn't just divorce court anymore. It was theft. And Grant was about to get desperate enough to do something stupid. When Nora sent the screenshot with Kelsey Park's name on it, I didn't feel shock. I felt the quiet click of a puzzle piece locking into place. Because suddenly, Grant knowing my plans wasn't magic. It was payroll. I stared at the transfer history, the same amount, the same timing, the same bland memo that could pass any quick glance. Consulting, like the universe itself had been helping him hide. It wasn't the kind of money people steal once. It was the kind they steal because they think no one is looking. Nora called. "We can take this to the court," she said, "or we can use it as leverage. Either way, you don't talk to her. Understood?" "Understood," I said. My voice sounded steady. My hands weren't. "Good," Nora replied. "Also, expect desperation. Grant is going to try to pull you back into the fire." She was right. That afternoon, Grant showed up at my apartment building. He didn't have the watch anymore. His suit was wrinkled like he'd slept in it. He looked up at my window with the expression of a man who believes he's still entitled to access. I didn't let him in. He texted instead, "We need to talk." For Evan. I hated that he used Evan's name like a key. Nora told me to ignore it. So I did. I fed Evan dinner, helped with homework, listened to him explain a science project about volcanoes like it was the most important thing in the world. Then, after he went to bed, I opened the folder Nora had prepared, my separate accounts, the trust paperwork, the boundaries drawn in ink so thick they couldn't be smudged by guilt. That night, Kelsey called. I watched her name glow on my screen. 20 years of friendship in 6 letters. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, breathless. "Marin, I didn't know he was using me like that. I was just helping with marketing. He said you were okay with it." Marketing? I almost laughed. The only thing she'd marketed was my humiliation. Instead of calling her back, I opened my laptop and pulled bank statements from my old title company accounts, then the retirement rollovers, then the inheritance ledger. I built a timeline, clean, simple, undeniable. What was mine? What was marital? What was stolen? I forwarded everything to Nora. Her reply came fast, perfect. "Now we protect Evan twice, financially and emotionally." "How?" I typed. "By making sure the next person who tries to use him loses access to him." I stared at that message until my pulse slowed, because if Grant and Celeste were willing to poison Evan's mind to get to me, then part 2 of this war wasn't about money anymore. It was about custody. And the clock had already started ticking. I became the version of myself they wanted, the one who looked exhausted, embarrassed, and ready to fold. At mediation I spoke softly, kept my eyes down, and asked for so little the mediator actually blinked twice. "Just enough to restart," I said, voice trembling on purpose. "My personal things. A small check. Shared time with my son. That's it." My husband's smile widened like he'd already won. He signed fast, eager, almost giddy. His mother bragged to anyone who'd listen that I finally accepted my place. And his new girlfriend started posting new chapter photos from my old living room like she'd earned it. That week, my best friend called again. Too sweet, too curious. "Are you sure you're okay?" "What are you asking for exactly?" she asked, as if she was taking notes. I gave her my best shaky breath performance. "I'm just tired," I whispered. "I want peace." Within an hour, my husband repeated my exact words to our son, like a ventriloquist using a kid as the puppet. And my son noticed. He noticed the expensive watch on Dad's wrist right after Dad said we couldn't afford the school trip. He noticed shopping bags stacked in the foyer while his father complained about tight months. One night, in my tiny kitchen with a rattling vent fan, Hahi asked the question that made my throat burn. "Mom, is Dad actually rich?" I didn't answer with rage. I answered with truth-shaped patience. "I think you already know," I said. "Just stay close to me and listen more than you talk." Behind the scenes, my attorney worked like a surgeon. The settlement looked simple on top. He gets the house, the cars, the business. I walk away. But underneath it sat the real document, a liability schedule, neat and merciless, listing every loan, lien, lease, and line of credit attached to the prize. 2 weeks before court, his attorney requested an audit. My husband shut it down. "No delays," he snapped. "I built it. I know what it's worth." So his attorney slid a waiver across the desk. I advised review. Client refused. My husband scribbled his signature without reading, because he was already texting his girlfriend about dinner. The night before the hearing, he messaged me. "Thanks for not making this ugly." I stared at it until it felt like comedy. Then I typed back, "I just want what's best for our son." At 9 a.m. tomorrow, he'll walk into that courtroom thinking he won everything. If you're still here, tap like, because the next scene is where the trap snaps shut. Thursday morning hit like a countdown. I woke before my alarm, not because I was nervous, because I was ready. Evan was still asleep, curled around his pillow like the world hadn't learned to lie yet. I brushed his hair back once, whispered, "I've got you," and left a note on the counter, "Back by lunch. Pancakes tonight." Outside the air was bright and cold, the kind of morning that makes everything look honest. Courtroom 8B was already buzzing when Nora and I arrived. Paper shuffling, low voices, the muted hum of people who think they're about to watch a woman get erased. Grant was there first, of course. He stood with his attorney like a man posing for a magazine cover. Shoulders square, jaw relaxed, victory already pinned to his lapel. Celeste sat in the gallery dressed like a celebration. Pearls. Perfect lipstick. The smug calm of someone who thinks consequences are for other families. Through the glass doors, I caught Paige in the hallway, scrolling her phone like this was a dentist appointment. She looked up just long enough to smile at Grant. Soft. Proprietary. And then went back to her screen. I wore the plain navy dress again. No jewelry. No drama. I let my eyes look tired. Let my hands clasp too tightly around my folder. Let them believe the story they wanted. The judge entered. We rose. The case was called. Grant's attorney summarized the agreement like he was announcing a purchase. Grant keeps the house, the company, the cars. I take a modest check, release claims, amicably move on. The judge's gaze landed on me sharp and suspicious. "Mrs. Quinn," she said, "you understand you're relinquishing substantial property?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you're signing voluntarily?" "Yes." Grant's smile deepened, just slightly, like he'd trained it for this moment. The clerk distributed the final packet, thick, tabbed, heavy with words no one reads until it's too late. Signature lines waited like little traps. Grant signed fast. Page, 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 barely scanning headers. His pen moved like he was racing a finish line. Celeste watched with satisfaction, already planning the lunch toast. Nora leaned toward me, barely moving her lips. "Slow," she breathed. "Let him rush." I signed with deliberate care. Not because I needed time to read, I'd read it 100 times, but because I wanted the room to feel my hesitation. The performance matters. The audience matters. The villain's confidence matters most. Then Grant's attorney reached the back attachments and did what Grant refused to do. He read. His eyes stopped. He flipped back a page, forward again. His face tightened, then drained like someone unplugged him. He leaned toward Grant and whispered 5 words, just 5. And Grant Hale, the man who demanded everything, went completely still. His lawyer leaned in again, closer this time. Owen whispered like the courtroom itself might hear numbers. "Grant," he said, voice tight, "you're taking personal responsibility for every lien and every loan. If you sign, it's all yours." Grant's smile cracked, not fully. He tried to glue it back on, but the panic leaked through his eyes. He flipped to the attachment at the back. The page he'd ignored like fine print was a myth. Liability schedule. His finger traced the columns: mortgages, vendor payables, a bridge note due in 30 days, the condo lease, the words personal guarantee repeated like a drum. "No," he breathed, and the sound was ugly. "That can't be right." His attorney's jaw clenched. "It is. We asked for an audit. You refused." Grant snapped the packet shut and tried to slide it away, as if hiding it could undo it. The judge noticed immediately. "Mr. Hale," she said, calm but sharp, "is there a problem with the agreement?" Grant stood too fast, chair scraping. "Your Honor, this addendum—" His attorney rose with him, hands open. "Your Honor, may we have a brief recess to review the attachments? My client may not have understood." Nora stood. "Objection. The attachments are part of the agreement. They were exchanged." "He has counsel." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Hale, did you read the full agreement, including attached schedules?" Grant's mouth opened, closed. He looked at Celeste in the gallery like she could mother him out of consequences. Celeste's face had gone stiff, lipstick smile gone flat. "I skimmed," Grant said. "That's not an answer," the judge replied. "Did you read it?" Silence stretched just long enough for the room to feel it. Then Grant said, "No, not every page." The judge turned to his attorney. "Counsel, did you recommend an independent review of the marital estate?" His attorney swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor." "And was it declined?" "Yes." Nora slid one sheet forward with 2 fingers. "We have a signed waiver, Your Honor." Grant's head snapped toward her. "What waiver?" "The one you signed," Nora said, voice even. Grant's hand trembled as he reached for the pen again, then pulled back like it burned. The judge tapped the file once. "Mr. Hale, you have a choice. Proceed today with the agreement you signed, or set this for trial. But understand, trial opens everything." Grant's eyes flicked to the word discovery on the waiver, then back to me. And for the first time, he looked truly afraid of what I might say next. Grant looked at the judge like he was waiting for someone to rescue him from his own signature. "I want to withdraw," he said, voice rising. "I didn't understand what I was signing. She buried this. This is fraud." The word fraud echoed wrong in the room, too loud, too desperate. The judge didn't react like a woman hearing a revelation. She reacted like a woman hearing an excuse she'd already heard 1,000 times. "Mr. Hale," she said evenly, "your attorney is present. You were given time. You confirmed on record that you understood and agreed." Grant pointed at the attachment, like it had crawled onto the table by itself. "Those numbers, those liens, This isn't what we discussed." His attorney cleared his throat, careful, trapped between his client and reality. "Your Honor, I did advise an independent financial review before a final execution." The judge's eyes flicked toward him. "And was that review completed?" "No," the attorney admitted. "Why not?" the judge asked, though her tone said she already knew. The attorney hesitated, then answered anyway. "My client declined." Nora stood without drama and slid the waiver forward again. 2 pages, clean, deadly. "He declined in writing, Your Honor." Grant's face tightened as he read the line he'd signed without reading. It wasn't poetic, it wasn't dramatic, it was just truth in legal font. Counsel advised, client refused, client assumes risk. Grant's voice cracked. "I was under pressure." The judge didn't blink. "Under pressure from whom?" Grant's mouth opened, then stopped. "Because the only honest answer would have been my own ego and the girlfriend waiting in the hallway." A low murmur moved through the courtroom. Celeste shifted in the gallery, suddenly unsure who she was proud of. Grant's attorney leaned in and whispered again, but this time I could read his lips. "Trial will expose everything." Grant's eyes snapped to mine. Not anger now, panic. He was seeing the edge of the cliff. Subpoenas, audits, discovery, every consulting payment dragged into daylight. He wanted out, but the only exit was admitting he didn't know his own finances. The judge gave him one last rope. "Mr. Hale, proceed with the executed agreement today, or set this matter for trial. But understand, this court will not protect you from a deal you chose not to read." Grant stared at the pen. His hand hovered, trembling. Then he picked it up. He signed the last page slowly, like each letter cost him something. The judge nodded once. So ordered. And in that single quiet moment, Grant got what he demanded. Everything. While the room finally understood what that word really meant. Structural beat aligned with the source. The judge didn't dramatize it. One clean strike of the gavel, and the marriage was history. "So ordered," she said. "Mr. Hale assumes the assets and all associated liabilities. Mrs. Quinn receives her settlement. This matter is concluded." Concluded. Grant sat there like his body hadn't caught up to his reality. The pen still in his hand. The last signature still wet. His attorney leaned in, speaking fast. Oh, but Grant wasn't listening. He was staring at the liability schedule like it had just crawled out of the paper and bitten him. Celeste stood in the gallery with her mouth slightly open, pearls catching the overhead light like a warning. For the first time since she'd arrived in my life, she looked unsure of her own power. Nora touched my elbow. "Don't look back," she murmured. I didn't. I gathered my folder and walked out the way I'd practiced in my head for 3 years, steady, quiet, no victory lap. The best revenge is control. The best closure is silence. In the hallway, Paige finally looked up from her phone. Grant's attorney pushed through the doors first, already dialing someone. "We need to call the lender," he said sharply, "and your accountant today." Paige blinked. "Lender? Why would—" Grant followed, tie loosened, eyes wild. "It's fine," he snapped. "It's a misunderstanding." Nora paused just long enough for Paige to hear what mattered. "It's not a misunderstanding," she said calmly. "It's in writing." Paige stepped closer, snatched the packet from Grant's hand, and scanned until her eyes hit the word lion. Her face changed. Not anger, fear, the kind that makes people suddenly remember they have options. "You told me you owned the house," she whispered. Grant swallowed. "I do." Paige laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "No, you owe the house." Grant reached for her arm. "Paige, listen." She yanked away like he was contagious. "This isn't what I signed up for," she said, voice rising, and then she was walking fast down the hall, heels clicking like a countdown to bankruptcy. Celeste appeared behind him, eyes glassy. "Grant, tell me this isn't real." Grant didn't answer her. He couldn't. He turned to me instead, like I was the emergency exit. "Marin," he said, voice cracking, "you knew. You set me up. You have to fix this." I stopped just long enough to meet his eyes once. "No," I said softly. "I don't." Then I stepped into the elevator. The doors began to close, and through the narrowing gap I watched Grant Hale realize the worst part wasn't losing me. It was that nobody left in that hallway was coming to save him. By Monday, the facade started cracking in public. Grant called 3 times before noon. I didn't answer. Then Celeste called. Then an unfamiliar number, his attorney's office. Then another number that flashed private like a threat. I let every one of them ring out while I made Evan a grilled cheese and asked about his spelling test, like our lives weren't orbiting a financial explosion. Evan came back from Grant's that evening, quieter than usual. He kicked off his shoes, dropped his backpack, and said, "Dad's house is loud now." "Loud how?" I asked gently. He shrugged. "Phones. People. Dad kept saying, 'It's temporary.' Grandma kept saying, 'This is your mother's fault.'" My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "And what did you say?" Evan hesitated. "Nothing." "That's okay," I told him. "You don't have to argue with adults. You just tell me how you feel." He stared at the floor. "I feel like Dad's mad at everybody." That night, Nora texted, "Second default notice. Vendor filed a lien. Bank scheduled a meeting. The next morning, I got the proof without even trying. Kelsey showed up at my building, mascara smudged, hair messy, holding her phone like a life raft. "Marin, please," she said before I could shut the door. "I didn't know it was debt. I thought he was just moving money around. He said you agreed. He said you were fine." "Move," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. "What?" I stepped closer so she could hear the calm in my voice. "You stole from a business I ran. You helped him spy on me. And you used my son as an excuse to feel innocent." Kelsey started crying. "I'll pay it back. I will. Just don't tell anyone." And there it was. Not remorse. Fear. I didn't argue. I didn't threaten. I simply looked past her to the hallway camera and said, "Leave." She backed away like she'd finally realized the woman she betrayed wasn't broken, just quiet. An hour later, Grant texted me a photo of a note on my old kitchen counter, Paige's handwriting, all sharp angles. "This isn't what I signed up for. Don't contact me." Then Grant's next message came in, faster, messier. "She left. Mom's freaking out. Help me." I forwarded both to Nora. Her reply came back instantly. "Good. Let him spiral. Also, Celeste is pushing a narrative that he's unstable. If they try to use Evan to pull you back in, we file first." I stared at Evan's drawing taped to our fridge, 2 stick figures holding hands under a bright sun. Then I typed, "Do it." Because the collapse wasn't just about money anymore. It was about who would try to grab my son when the empire finally hit the ground. The last time I heard Vincent's voice, it was on a voicemail he didn't realize he left me. Half a threat, half a plea. "This can still be fixed," he said. Like the universe owed him a refund. But the universe doesn't do refunds. It does receipts. The line of credit froze first. Overnight, the company that used to pay invoices before the ink dried couldn't even cover payroll. Vendors stopped answering Vincent's calls and started answering his mail. Certified letters, demand notices, lawsuits stacked like dirty dishes. By the third month, he was sitting across from bankruptcy attorneys asking what could be shielded from creditors. The answer was almost nothing. Lorraine tried to keep her chin high while her world slid sideways. She called relatives for short-term help, showed up at cousins' houses with rehearsed speeches, and told anyone who would listen that I must have hidden debts, forged signatures, trapped her son. It sounded better than the truth. The truth was blunt. Vincent had signed everything: mortgages, loans, the investments that weren't investments, the secret lease, the gambling he called stress relief. Every document carried the same confident scrawl of his name. A week after the hearing, Diane called. Her voice shook. "Alexis, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was this bad. I'm sorry." She kept talking, trying to stitch 20 years back together with a few sentences. I didn't give her that comfort. I didn't yell either. I just let the call die in my hand and set the phone down like it was contaminated. Some friendships don't break. They rot. Lorraine tried a softer tactic next. She went through Tyler. "Tell your mother I didn't know about the money problems," she said, eyes wet. "Tell her I want to talk." Tyler looked at her, really looked, and something in him closed. "Mom's building her life now," he said. "She's not taking excuses." About a month after the divorce, Tyler said the sentence I'd been bracing for. We were in my small apartment, boxes finally flattened, a kitchen painted a dusty olive because I needed one place that felt calm. "You sat on this for 3 years," he said. "You knew, and you waited." "I waited," I admitted, "to make sure you were protected." I told him about the trust fund, untouchable, locked down, meant for him no matter what his father burned. Tyler went quiet, then stepped forward and hugged me like he was choosing me on purpose. My settlement bought stability, rent, deposits, a mattress that didn't sag. The trust stayed put. And then my phone lit up again. Unknown number. Calling twice, back to back. The unknown number called again that night as Evan brushed his teeth. I let it ring out, then listened to the voicemail. "Marin," Grant's voice rasped, stripped of its polish. "Please, I just need 5 minutes." 5 minutes. That's what he used to say when he needed me to smooth a lender, calm a vendor, clean up a mess quietly so he could keep looking like a winner. I didn't call back. The next morning, Nora texted, "Bank filed notice. Vendor suit is moving, and Kelsey's account is tied to the consulting transfers. If she contacts you again, forward everything." Evan came home from school carrying his volcano poster and a worry he shouldn't have. "Dad asked me if you hate him," he said, like he was repeating a line he didn't want to memorize. I knelt so we were eye level. "I don't hate your dad," I said. "I hate the choices he made, and I love you enough to stop those choices from hurting you." Evan blinked hard, then nodded once. "Okay," he whispered, like he'd been waiting for something clear. That afternoon, I took him to the park. He launched paper airplanes and adjusted the wings, learning what stayed up and what crashed. I watched him accept the wind instead of arguing with it. When we got home, there was a knock. Grant stood in the hallway looking smaller than I remembered. No watch, no swagger, just dark circles and a wrinkled coat. Celeste hovered behind him, lips tight, eyes glossy with panic. "I didn't know it was this bad," Grant said. "I made mistakes. I can fix it. His voice broke. "I need your help." I leaned against my door frame, calm as a locked safe. "You asked for everything," I said softly. "I gave you everything." Celeste tried to step forward. "Morin, for Evan, I cut in. "This ends here." Grant's eyes flicked past me, searching for my old kitchen, my old life, some sign I still belonged to him. Instead, he saw our small hallway, Evan's drawings, the peace he never valued. "Please," he said again. I shook my head. "Goodbye, Grant." I closed the door. Behind it, my apartment was quiet. My money was protected. My son was safe. And Grandma June's rule finally felt like freedom. Keep your own life and guard it like it matters. That night, Evan and I made pancakes. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like ours. And just like that, the story comes to a close. Now, my wonderful friends, if you're still here with me until this moment, that means something in this journey touched your heart in a real way, and I want to honor that by leaving you with a few truths you can carry into your own life. This story isn't only about betrayal or money, it's about clarity. When people show you who they are, believe them and protect your peace before you try to protect their feelings. It's also a reminder that quiet strength is still strength. As the Stoics taught, you have power over your mind, not outside events. When everything around you feels unfair, your greatest freedom is choosing how you respond. And sometimes, healing looks like boundaries, not forgiveness. Like Marcus Aurelius said, the impediment to action advances action. What tried to break her became the very thing that set her free. So if you're in a season where you feel underestimated, cornered, or blamed, remember this. Stay calm, stay smart, and don't let anyone use your kindness as a weapon. If this story gave you courage or comfort, please like, share, and subscribe. It truly helps this channel reach more hearts like yours. And tell me in the comments what part